Good morning. This is David Morsilli, King David. I'm live streaming to you on Sunday, the 3rd of December, 2023. I thought this was a good time to get back on Facebook and do another video because there's been a lot of activity the last few days, ever since I started distributing the emergency public announcement that I had made up, because I had been doing all my Facebook posts and on Twitter. I've been putting the word out, but I know it's been limited. There hasn't been the exposure that I needed. So I decided to put something in leaflet form that I could distribute myself to let people know what was going on. So I want to read it to you. Now, state, local, federal government, police included, have been lawfully dissolved for fraud as per my court motion for a change of venue dated 3 September 2021 to Justice Stephen Nugent of Rhode Island Superior Court. I'm now the sovereign governor of the state of Rhode Island and the sovereign king of the United States of America, et al., meaning and others. I will explain how this happened. And first of all, the court motion, this is all done through the legal system, through the court system. It caught them off guard, no doubt, but it was all done through the courts. So it's legal. I'm not doing anything outside of the law whatsoever. A quick history lesson. There's the Act of 1871. That was when the United States was secretly turned from a sovereign independent country into a corporation. That's what happened. And so that was in 1871. In the courts, they followed up with that. That's when they switched out constitutional law. Our Constitution is supposed to be the law of the land. But that was secretly switched out. And they put in admiralty law. And they didn't tell anybody. It was purposely kept a secret. They never made any announcements or anything. So that's deception. That's fraud right there. So that's what they did. So the Supreme Court, the state courts, the federal courts, it's all admiralty law that's being practiced. So when our elected officials get sworn in the judges and the justices, when they're sworn in, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution, to uphold and defend the Constitution. Yet it's not even being practiced in the courts. So there's a deception going on that they've hidden all this time. Only people who know their history and do research and dig. If you rely on mainstream media for your news and for your information, you're lost. You're just brainwashed. You're on a whole different pathway. You don't even know what's going on. You have to be somebody who goes and does your own research, because that's what happened. In Rhode Island, they did the switch in like 1935. They switched out the constitutional law from the courts. It was under President FDR. He was the one that coordinated that. So they switched it all out. So the justices, they're not even keeping their oaths. So that's what I pointed out in my change of venue. I called them out on that, and that's fraud. It's treason too, because with the admiralty law, from the state courts to the U.S. Supreme Court, that goes to the British monarchy. That's where the loyalties go. It is not to the U.S. government. It's not to the U.S. people, the American people. It's to the British monarchy. That was the trick. The Act of 1871, that was coordinated by the British monarchy. Ever since we declared our independence and gained our independence, they were determined to get us back under their control. In the Act of 1871, it did exactly that, along with the Vatican. So it became Washington, D.C., the City of London, which is the British monarchy, and the Vatican. That's what that secret agreement does. So it made us a corporation that was controlled by the British monarchy and the Vatican. I mean, that's just fraud. We were no longer a sovereign, independent country. We were secretly switched to be a corporation. And in the state of Rhode Island and other states, they did the same thing at the state level. They made it the Rhode Island Corporation. And so there's all that fraud going on. And I called them out. You can't do that. In the court of law, fraud vitiates all contracts, all agreements, everything. So it nullified everything, because under that, that's when then that you have under the corporate status. That's when the General Assembly, like at the state level, is created. The police, the Rhode Island State Police, it's all under an illegitimate structure, corporate structure. Not a we were supposed to. The state of Rhode Island is supposed to be a sovereign state. Also, we lost all that status, went to corporate status, and that's what allowed them to switch out systems. The Act of 1871, that actually is what allowed the U.S. Treasury to subcontract out our monetary system to the Federal Reserve. Now they name it the Federal Reserve to make it sound like like it's part of the government, but it is not. It's just private banks, J.P. Morgan, all the big banks. They're all part of the Federal Reserve. And the U.S. Treasury is supposed to be responsible for all the monetary policy, the circulation of the dollars, responsible for all of that. All the financials of the country. But it was subcontracted out. It doesn't make any sense. And then they subcontracted out to private banks that are charging us interest, high interest. And so now, now we're like hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt. And that's just in the United States. The $33 trillion number that they mentioned, that's just what they're reporting. But the unfunded mandates for Social Security, Medicare, that adds it up to over 100 trillion. And then there's just hidden debt that they've been doing. The U.S. Treasury only, in the Constitution, it only recognizes gold and silver as constitutional money, and then we subcontract our monetary system to the banks. And then in 1971, that's when President Nixon, we had been on a gold standard. In 1971, President Nixon took us off the gold standard, because under the gold standard, for every dollar you have in circulation, you're supposed to have $1 in reserves being held. And what was happening was they were printing out more than they actually had in reserves. And then it was getting out of hand. So President Nixon had to just take us off the gold standard. So then the US dollar became backed by nothing. In order to keep the demand up, they worked out a deal with Saudi Arabia to make it where they would only accept, you could only buy oil with the US dollar. So it kept demand for the US dollar, even though it wasn't backed by anything anymore. It had been backed by gold, but now it's backed by nothing. They kept demand up by doing that little trick. And then on top of that, a lot of trade, because the trade, they all trade between countries. It became the US dollar became the world reserve currency. And all trade was being done in US dollars also to prop up the dollar. But the Federal Reserve has not been audited since 1971, that when we went off the gold standard. And they've just been printing and printing and printing. So all this money is just, the whole Federal Reserve system is just a complete fraud with the banks. The U.S. Treasury could be loaning people money to buy homes for 0% interest. No interest. All the loans could be like that for the people. But they subcontract it out, which why would you even do that? It doesn't even make any sense to put private banks in responsible for our monetary system. It's like you can go on and on with the fraud. Our government has been completely hijacked by special interests. Whether you want to talk, it's all about the agenda in Congress and at the state level in the General Assembly. It's all about the lobbyists. The lobbyists control everything. And the lobbyists, their biggest clients, like in the insurance industry, oil industry, banks, it's all of that. It's all about them getting their agenda. That's why people are struggling more and more. It's like just to make ends meet. People just to pay rent. Nobody's even living. It's like they're working full-time jobs, getting part-time jobs, and to put food on the table. It's like there's so much struggling going on. Homelessness, they don't even keep track of it. If they're gonna, economic indicators they report, like unemployment, which you can manipulate numbers. Why don't they report? Why don't they track homelessness? Because they don't want anybody to know how bad the situation is. That's why. That's why. There's so much. There's such abundance in this world of wealth, and it's being controlled by so few. It's the 99% and the 1%. The 1% holds all the money. So there's all these frauds going on. It's so, and then the government is just out of control with how big it's gotten, and all the money, whatever money is supposed to be going to the population, to the people, it just disappears. Even the Federal Reserve, whenever the economy is sluggish, they always say, "Oh, we're going to pump stimulus money into the economy." That's what they say. This is what that means. This means that they're going to send all the money that they're going to pump into the economy. They send it to the banks, and they allow the banks to decide how it gets distributed. Then the banks send it to their favorite corporations, and the corporations, they do whatever. A lot of them, for the last few decades, they've been doing all stock buybacks for themselves to inflate their stock prices. Because many of them get stock options. All the senior executives, they get stock options. So everything's dependent on the price of the stock for them. So it's like the money never even makes it. It's not even like they're putting into the companies for R&D or just building new factories or anything. All our factories in America, the politicians, they sent them all overseas. Manufacturing. We used to be a big manufacturer. The world's biggest. After World War II, we dominated. Not anymore. And whatever they are manufacturing, like I know with my Jeep Grand Cherokee, it's a 2015. It's junk. It's so chintzy built. Everything's plastic. Even I had a 2007 one. It was sturdy, like you could feel the car. This one, it's just everything they're making it. The quality is just going down and down and down. Things are in dire shape. People are struggling. And you have like the police, they came to my apartment the other day. You have corrupt police, corrupt courts that are propping up a corrupt system. So anybody who speaks out, like myself, you get visits by the police. A few weeks, a month and a half ago, they came. I had just made a post about election fraud that was happening because I've given documentation on how they do mail-in ballot fraud. I had done that, how they do that at centers where they control the ballots. I documented that, and then I had added another way they steal at the election sites after you fill out the ballot in private, and then you have to slip it into the machine for it to get scanned. They're rejecting those ballots. If you go outside, you're supposed to keep the pen mark within the little oval. If you go out of that the slightest amount, it voids out the ballot. So what they were doing is they were replacing all the voided out ballots, putting their own pre-filled in ballots for who they wanted, and then they would change the number for what was rejected. And they would change it for, I don't know how, but I think they probably rejected more than 50%. Because I know in 2020, when I went to Providence City Hall, where I voted early that year, I had filled out my ballot, and I was very neat with everything. In one oval, I went just a little bit outside of the circle. I didn't even think it was a big deal. I was about to scan it, but then I asked the campaign worker that was standing right there. I said, "Is this okay?" And he looked at it. He said, "Oh no, let me get you a new ballot." So I was thinking, it occurred to me, it's like all these years when I've been voting, I haven't been that neat. I know I've been a little sloppy at times, thinking it wouldn't make a difference. It does make a difference. And they've never even shared that with us. These elections are being stolen. 2020 election, that was stolen. It's like with the elections, carrying out the elections in each state, that is the responsibility to set the laws for each state, how they're going to conduct the elections. That's the responsibility of the General Assembly, of the state legislature. That's spelled out in the Constitution. That's who's responsible for it. If any changes are going to be made to that, the General Assembly needs to do that themselves. You can't have the Secretary of State making changes because there was COVID, and then they did mail-in ballots. They sent mail-in ballots to the entire population. I received one. I never even asked for one. Previously, there was always criteria that you had to meet if you wanted one. You had to request one, and you had to put the reason why you needed a mail-in ballot. All of that. In 2020, all of that was disregarded. They just sent ballots to everybody. You can't do that. That's unconstitutional. The General Assembly had to approve that, and they never did. And then the Secretary of State went on to certify the election. That's false. That's illegitimate, and it wasn't constitutional. But yet, Congress, and this is what January 6th is all about. Congress signed off on that. It clearly was unconstitutional. You have to stick to the rule of law. You can't, we'll ignore it. It's not convenient now. You can't do that. So Congress certified the election, and then the U.S. Supreme Court certified it. A fraudulent, that's fraud. You can't do that. It should have been sent back to the states. People always say, "Oh, Mike Pence, he couldn't. He had to just sign off on it." He didn't. He could have sent it back to the states, but that would have created a mess because it was illegitimate, because the Secretary of States and other states too, a bunch of other states, a lot of Democrat states. I used to be a Democrat, but whatever. That's what they did. So it wasn't. So that the 2020 election, it was an illegitimate election. The election is being stolen. How do you think all this corruption just keeps on going and going and going? There are not free and fair elections. The corruption you can go on and on with, but the police, I mean, I've been experiencing this for the last several years. They're in stalker mode. They're in predator mode. It's so creepy the way they are. They just appear out of nowhere. At every turn, I have on my Facebook page so many of the police officers I took pictures of harassing, pulling me over. I have organized crime guys on the sidewalk, that guy. That was, that's mafia. That's patriarchal crime family in Rhode Island. Because I'm speaking up. The whole system is just corrupt. So when I had that opportunity, when the judge, it was a housing court matter. They were trying to evict me. This was right after I did, this was during, I had been doing a lot of public disclosures. I used to work in state government for Governor Sullivan. So I knew a lot of corruption that was going on. I was documenting everything on Facebook. I needed to get the word out. That's when they wanted to get me out of Water Place. So they started trying to, they put pressure on my landlord to force me. I had no problem with my landlord. I was paying my rent fine, everything. They made him file with the court to get me evicted. And when I appealed, it was just supposed to be a straightforward appeal. The judge ruled, no, you had to go. I had a formal appeal. It was just supposed to be ruled on whether they agree or not, whether the appeal, whether I can stay or whether I had to leave. And the judge unexpectedly called for a trial. He was upset about something. So he called for a trial. That opened the opportunity. That gave me the opportunity to file a motion for a change of venue. And in that motion for a change of venue, which is a legal document, I put in there the fraud that had happened with the Act of 1871. That's treason. The Act of 1871 is treason, and that's what they've been. They switched out the constitutional law, common law that was supposed to be practiced in our court. That's the law of the land, and they switched it out secretly. It's all like a deception, fraud, no announcements, and so I called them out in it. So that was locked in. So I got that locked in. At first they just ignored it, that it never even happened, but I got it locked in. And so it's legal. It's legal. Then based on that, I had my document I just posted a few days ago, my memorandum from 6 February 2023 of this year, in which I dissolved the state government for Rhode Island, and I declared myself the sovereign governor. With fraud, like I said, in the court of law, fraud vitiates all contracts and agreements. So it's all fraudulent, the system. And I documented the state police. They were involved. They're targeting me. They have a contract on me. The Rhode Island State Police. The whole system is corrupt. I used to work in state government, like I said, with Governor Sumlin in the early 90s, 91 to 94. I saw it. I saw the union leaders come in, muscle. They're the mafia. They're an arm of the mafia, the unions. All they cared about was their pensions. Everything was about pensions for them. They came in, they have such influence. And if you don't play ball with them, they make sure you don't get elected. They're so vicious. They're so vindictive. And they just come in like they control everything, because they've always controlled everything. That's how organized crime controls everything, through the unions. The unions, police, fire, construction, I think of all the union jobs. I mean, you could go on and on. So they control everything. So they have an army at their disposal. So all those people, they can control. They can get people arrested. They can get people taken into custody. They took me into custody. They sent me to a mental hospital because I posted about the election fraud that was going on with the ballot scanners. A few hours later, the Warwick police show up with this mental health professional from Providence Center. She wasn't even a doctor. I'm like, you're not a doctor. She said, I have a master's. Are you kidding me? They used the state law, to take me into custody that did not even require a judge's signature. They just took me into custody. It was the police just got me, and they brought somebody from Providence Center, and they took me into custody. 9 days they held me. They denied me of my right to freedom as an American citizen without any due process. Due process means the courts had to sign off on something like that. You can't just have somebody with a master's degree come and say, oh yeah, yes, you have psychosis. I don't have anything. There's none of that. They want to say that about me because they want to undermine my credibility. But I'm right about all this stuff. I'm on target. And so they create these distractions, like they create lies, they spread lies, they misrepresent everything, they mischaracterize everything. Yesterday, after I posted my previous memorandum, I posted it on Facebook about how the Rhode Island State Police is a captured operation. I don't know, a half hour later, an hour later, I see Rhode Island State Police cruiser drive past my window over here. A little bit after that, a U-Haul truck moves past. They want to move me out, and then they have some guy that they staged an incident, like some guy was having, he didn't even say, I was on the elevator ready to go back to my room. I'd gone outside just to get some fresh air, and I come back in, and this guy said, oh, I need to get on the elevator back to my room. And I said, no. I said, I'm going upstairs. I'll send the elevator back. And so then later on, the woman calls me from the front desk, this person was having a medical emergency. I said, what are you talking about? There was no, they stage everything. They just make up lies. And they're making it like, oh, I kept this guy from his medication or something. He only said, oh, I'm going to my room. I said, no, I'll send the elevator back. It's like, they're so sneaky how they can stage events to try to make you look bad. And it's so creepy like that. They can lock up anybody. That's how they silence people. If they can't kill you, they lock you up in prison. If they can't lock you up in prison, they try to send you to a mental institution. They sent me to Butler. So I was at Butler. And the psychiatrist there had all good reports on me. She let me out a day early. There was no issue with me. The only thing they say is, well, he's saying he's the sovereign governor of the state of Rhode Island, so he must be crazy. I have all my documentation. It's all backed up. And I've sent all my memorandums and everything. It goes to the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is the military. When it has to, and I send it to the Rhode Island Sheriff, David Cesare. I send them to the state police. I send them to Governor McKee. I send them to all the relevant, the General Assembly, the Speaker, and the Senate Majority Leader. They all get all my memorandums, and I document them. So I'm keeping everybody in the loop. So nothing I do is outside of the law. I'm a law and order person, absolutely. And I take great pride in upholding the Constitution, and I always will. These people aren't even following any laws. You know, that state law that they took me into custody, the General Assembly passed that. That's totally unconstitutional. And it's going to be proven that. But it's unconstitutional. You can't have that situation where somebody with a master's comes and it says, yeah, I have psychosis, and the police take me into custody. They put me into handcuffs. That's the first time in my entire life I was ever put in handcuffs. And they did that. Just to get me, just to silence me. You know, and then I went to Butler, and there's no issue with me. But they want to twist it and say that I am. It's all there. There's so much corruption. There's so much. They've been up to so much evil. They're exposed, and because I dissolved the government, I dissolved the state government. The organized crime, they have nowhere to hide. They always relied on the police and the courts to protect them, and then the government. But I dissolved that. They don't have any protection now. They have no overhead. They have no top cover. So they're fighting for their lives because they know they're all exposed. They're fighting for their lives. So all the corrupt politicians, everything that's been going, all the pension fraud, all of that's all exposed. It's just, they've been stealing all the money. You know, think of all the taxes we pay. Where are the taxes going? If the taxes were coming back to us somehow, we would have free health care. We wouldn't have so many issues struggling with everything. Utilities are so outrageous. Rent, people are barely surviving. Our infrastructure is awful. And that's across the country. Schools, absolutely failing. Failing grades, and even more so with COVID. You know, it's the system is completely broken. Completely. It's not a matter of a new elected official and get them in and you know, and we'll try to make these change. No, the whole system needs to come down and be rebuilt. Now I'm already the sovereign governor of the state of Rhode Island. I'm already the sovereign king of the United States of America. That's already done. Those were like self-executing documents. Everything's in fraud. So all the Congress, the U.S. Supreme Court, those were all formed under the corporation, under USA Corporation. Same with the state of Rhode Island. So they're all in fraud. That's why with all my documentation I've sent to all of them, they can't even respond because they know they're illegitimate. They don't have standing to even respond to anything that I've written. They don't. They don't. It's all one big fraud that's been happening. And it exposes everyone. So those are the issues. And, you know, and when I say like, I'm the sovereign governor, I'm the sovereign king, I want all the elected officials, I want that structure to all remain in place. So like at the local level with town councils or city councils, all of those elected officials, they will still be there. There will still be a mayor in every city. There will still be a governor in every state. There will still be the General Assembly, the state legislatures in every state. They'll be elected. So there will all be that structure in place. We'll still at the federal level, we'll have a Congress. We'll have a U.S. Supreme Court. All of that. So those will all be elected officials. I will be above that. So I will be setting the agenda. But there will be, I've reestablished, I reestablished the sovereignty of each independent country has regained its sovereignty because the corporate status that we were secretly slipped into in the United States, that was done across the world with all the countries except Switzerland. And there's a reason why that Switzerland was the only one that didn't. Everybody was. So I restored that because the foundational document that established land rights for each country, it was called the Doctrine of Discovery, that was issued by the Vatican. So that was what all land claims were based on, the Doctrine of Discovery. There were other land claims after that, but the foundational document was the Doctrine of Discovery, that all land claims around the world for each country were based on. That's how they slipped everybody into the corporate status. Now, several months ago, I dissolved the British monarchy in the Vatican. So then, so I said I don't get any responses back on the document, but a few months ago, just recently, the Vatican, they dissolved the Doctrine of Discovery document. That no longer, they nullified it. So that meant that any other of the treaties that they had on top of that, it's all a failed system now because the foundational layer has been dissolved. So based on that, then I put together a memorandum and I reestablished each country regains its sovereign, independent country status. Each country. And that's even independent of me being king. It's not like, oh, if you don't let me be king, you don't have the status. No. Each country has that status returned to it. It's already been restored. So I want each country to be independent and sovereign, not being controlled by foreign powers. I don't want any of that. I want each country to be able to make its own policies, agenda, to look out for its own self-interests. So the government structure, now with all the departments, all the agencies, all the bloated government, that's going to be reduced. That's going to be eliminated. We're going to replace, 90% of government will be replaced with a software application on your phone. Everybody's going to be getting new Q phones, quantum phones. That's where everything will take place. Everybody will have, like in America, and work for the same for each country. In the United States, each citizen will have an account with the U.S. Treasury that you access from your phone. Once you have to verify your identity on the phone, and you're going to conduct, that's how all your financial transactions will be like that. It'll be coordinated like that. We're going to do voting by the phone. With all the election fraud, there's no way. There's no legitimacy to any government where you're having where you have fraudulent elections. The very basis of it, we have a constitutional republic is what we're supposed to have. It's the cornerstone of that to be able to have free and fair elections. If you don't have free and fair elections, you have nothing. That's how all these problems have started. They've been stealing elections. So we need to do voting by phone. Everything will be blockchain online. So you'll be able to check your vote that it was counted, and it will be all done in a transparent way, open sourced, so people will be able to see that there's no fraud going on. So what I'm going to do as king, as governor, I'm calling for free new elections. Once I'm in place, I'm going to have the military already has the phones. The military's been planning for this. They know this was on track for a while. Everybody's going to get new phones. You verify your identity. We're going to have new elections within 120 days of that. So you're going to be re-electing all elected officials. Now, with going forward, the political system, no political parties, absolutely banned. So you're electing elected officials who are basically going to be constituent services people. So the elected officials, they're going to be implementing some of the policies that I intend to do, which, for instance, so the banks, I already established how the banks have been acting in fraud. And then in a simple audit, you can go into the basic, whether it's fractional lending, which I've explained in previous videos, the fractional lending, how they take $1,000 that somebody deposits, and then they're able to loan out $9,000 and get interest on, collect that interest, and then 1,000 that I put in, they can use half of that, but I think it's even more than half. They can play the stock market with that, and then they do all the short selling, so they know how to grab capital out out of the markets, all the stock market. It's all rigged. The real estate. It's all, they control all of that. All the every time there's a collapse, all that capital is being sucked out by the corrupt forces behind the scenes. When I say corruption, I sometimes use the word deep state corruption. It's like the Illuminati. There's the bloodline families in Europe, and includes the British monarchy. But it's that those forces, they control the establishment in America. You know, they control the banks. The banks, they're all on the same agenda. The oil companies. You know, oil companies, another big fraud. Oil is a reoccurring resource under the surface of the earth. So it replenishes itself. They always talk about, oh, the scarcity, and then they can charge all this money for it because it's scarce. No, and they drill it out, which is so expensive. It's BS. Nikola Tesla had developed free energy over 100 years ago, and it was squashed. He uses the electromagnetic field of the earth to generate free, clean energy. And the oil companies squashed that because they wanted to sell it. They wanted to sell energy in the most inefficient way possible. So you don't even need the oil companies. Free energy is available, has always been available. So people who talk about they're worried about the environment and everything, if they're not talking about free energy, which none of them are, then you know they're all a fraud, because they are. So the banks, we're not paying back any of the banks for any of the debt. None. And this is global. The banks are done. The banks are going to be nationalized, internationalized. Everything's going to be seized, all the assets. So if anybody, say, had a mortgage or a car loan or student loan, credit card debt, that's done. That's canceled. That's canceled. There'll be some criminal elements who have debt. They will own that. But for everybody else, it's being wiped out. So there will be no more debt. The banks and the titles that they have, so for a mortgage, the banks will have the title for the home, or they'll have the title for the vehicle, or whatever the loan is for. All those titles will be sent to the people who had the mortgages, so they will own that home outright. The mortgage will be canceled. So the banks taking over the banks. So the people will own their homes. Now, for the renters, we're going to be seizing so much money, all the criminal money. The U.S. Treasury and the treasuries around the world, they will be seizing all the criminal assets. And so there's so much. It's like the numbers, they don't even make sense. They're so big. We have more than enough money for everything. I am paying everybody's rent, everybody's utilities, so water, gas, electric, internet, cable, whatever I'm missing, all the utilities will be paid. Going to nationalize all the utility companies. Now, with the utility companies, now there will be no disruption of services. I'm going to start with making sure the utility companies, that all the billing will stop. No more customer billing will happen. It'll all be transferred to the state. Will make arrangements, or the government will make arrangements. All of that, the government will keep the financial flow going to the company, so there's no shortfall. So they can't say, oh, we can't operate anymore, and then the services fall apart. No, it'll be all, so the government will just pick up the cost. And then the mandate, I'm going to do an immediate mandate to all electric companies, all cable companies. They have to go wireless. So there's no more wires will be for anything. So it'll make everything so much more efficient. So when there's storms and everything, no power lines will go down because everything will be wireless. Wireless technology also, over 100 years ago, it was invented. Nikola Tesla did that also, wireless electricity. That was squashed. They have the most inefficient system using wires, wires connecting houses. It can all be wireless. You don't even need plugs for any appliances. It can just be wireless. Think how much easier that will be. And then when you do something like that, you bring the cost down so much, because in Rhode Island, they have so many maintenance people, tree cutters, trying to trim trees, trying to stay ahead of Mother Nature. It's like, forget it. There's so many problems. Just make everything wireless. It's the people in charge of the status quo, the agenda. That's why nothing changes. It just remains the same, inefficient, bloated. So that's what I'm doing. I'm paying. I'm done with people struggling. I'm for the 99%. Absolutely for the 99%. And I'm not trying to be a dictator. I had to dissolve the government as I did, because I also am being targeted. You know, the way I'm being targeted also, I had to take care of that issue, but there's bigger issues involved. So this isn't like, oh, I'm king or anything. This is just, it happened, you know, and I went with it. And now I'm in a great situation, and I'm going to resolve, I'm going to fix these problems. People say, oh, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing from a high level, and then I'll work with everybody to get everything accomplished. But the banks are gone. The banks will be gone. Everybody will have an account with the U.S. Treasury, and the post offices, they need to be reinvented. So we're going to have them do banking also. So post offices will take over banking. So people will have accounts at the post office. No charges for anything. No banking. There won't be overdraft fees. There will be nothing like that. All the money, all the currency going forward will all be gold-backed and silver-backed. We're going back to constitutional money. I want all the state government, the city government, state, federal, the elected officials. I'm talking the elected officials. I'm not talking about the bureaucracy. I'm talking about the elected officials. I want that all to remain in place. I'm not like just getting rid of everything and saying I'm king, and that's not what I'm doing. I'm keeping all the structure in place. But I want them to know there's no political parties. There's none of that going on anymore. There's no special interest money infiltrating. There's fundraising, lobbying. It's all banned. No contribution to elected officials either. None. And there's not, you're not allowed to do that. For elections, it'll be publicly funded. So each candidate will get the same amount of money, and you do your campaigning, but it's all for everything I want to do with the housing situation. We need to find housing for people. So the elected officials that take office, their responsibility at the local levels is identify how many homeless do you have, what's your housing situation, how much housing do you have available, and where are the gaps, where are the shortfalls, and then we look to build new housing. But I want a census. So the phones will be terrific, because even the census numbers, I don't believe the census numbers. And I know with another way that the voter fraud I know is happening is with the Social Security Administration. Because when I was doing genealogy research a few decades ago, I was at the Department of Health. I had to get a death certificate for a grandparent. So it wasn't at the archives. It was recent, so I had to go there. And I was just casually asking about how they inform, how Social Security is informed about deaths. And the Department of Health, they make the communication to this. So I know they're not reporting the deaths, all of the deaths, some of them, but some of them they're keeping Social Security checks. And I know, and they're also using that to add people to the voting rosters, to keep people on the voting rosters for the election fraud. So, we're getting rid of all of that. And so people will verify their identity on the phones. We'll know who's who. We're going to vote that way. Once everything happens, it's going to be 120 days. And we're going to have new elections. And people will vote. And then we'll know. Everything will be transparent for everyone to see. There's no shenanigans going on. I want clean government. I want all the corruption gone, all the organized crime gone, done, finished. You have to just do it. You can't just do little here and there. It'll go on forever and it'll never happen. You just have to get the job done. The civilian system, it can't handle the arrests that are going to happen. The system's too corrupt. The system's entirely corrupt. The only way, the military is the only way. They have to be the ones to make the arrest. Before that can happen, they want it so everybody knows what's happening, so that the population is informed of the situation. They don't want anybody to be surprised when they see military aircraft and everything, arrest happening, because that's how it's going to happen. So before that happens, I needed to get the word out. I needed to let people know what was happening. I'm not alone here. People will try to make it seem like I'm just some crazy person in a hotel room. I was thrown out of my apartment illegally, criminally. They used fake eviction paperwork to get me out of my place at Water Place where I lived. I never caused any problems there at all. And then the police came, they forced me out, they took all my possession, they put it in a moving truck, keep it in storage. Corruption is awful. And you're gonna, when the crimes are revealed, human trafficking, child trafficking, sex trafficking, that's just a small component of what's been going on. Organized crime is behind everything. All the drugs, all the fentanyl. You ask, how can we have this opioid crisis and it's never getting fixed? I worked in Afghanistan in 2010. I was in Marja. Poppy fields galore everywhere. In 2010, the United States and the Allies had already been in Afghanistan for 9 years at that point. 2001, after the September 11th attacks. 2001. 2010, when I was there, the poppy growing was stronger than ever. The poppy yields. It's like, well, how would that be? Because it's a drug operation. That's what it is at the essence of the drug operation. They make it seem like, oh, they're fighting the Taliban and all this. That's just all cover. That's for the narrative that the media backs up. It was drug running operation. That's the opioid crisis in the United States. It happened in the early 2000s, right after we invaded Afghanistan. Because all that poppy, which got turned into heroin, they send it to northern Afghanistan through the Chinese mining companies, so it goes to China. And then it comes to the United States. They send it back as OxyContin and all those highly, highly addictive drugs that they started. Somehow the FDA approves all that. Why? Because they're controlled by the pharmaceutical industries, special interests. That's what did all of that. So the Chinese, they would send it. So some of the poppy goes through northern Afghanistan into China through the mining companies, and they send it back that way. And other poppy goes right into Mexico, and they manufacture heroin there, and then it comes over the border. And then the fentanyl is in there somewhere too. It's all on purpose. It's all coordinated like that, you know. And then there's the journalist Gary Webb. He had exposed in the 90s, 80s and 90s how the CIA was involved with pumping all drugs in all the inner cities, causing the drug crisis. The government's corrupt. The government's corrupt completely. There's nothing to. It has to be. It has to be like this. It has to be like this. You have to dissolve it in order to rebuild. But I'm not a king, but at the same time I am. I'm in charge. But I want people to vote. I want elections. I want people to have all their elected officials that they voted. I'm above that, and I'll set the agenda. But I will always uphold the Constitution, absolutely. Always. I've taken a sworn oath online several times. I want rule of law. You can't have a civilized society where rules are enforced for some but not for others. That's what I want. And I'm with the utilities and rents and everything, and education will be free. Everybody's entitled to education, college education. It'll all be coordinated. All the billing and medical. Everybody's entitled to medical. Every single person. If you're sick, or your child is sick, You take them to the doctors with no copay, no cost whatsoever. Any communications is with the doctor's office and the government will take care of all billing. None of that will be on the people. Everybody's entitled to free medical. It's a basic human right. Housing is a basic human right. And in this day and age, even internet, having access, Wi-Fi access, free access, that's a basic human right. You need access to information. You need to be able to get things done. Electricity, the electricity company, I already talked about how they're going to go wireless. They're going to go free energy. All the free energy solution, we're going to go down that road. So we're going to clean that up with vehicles. I know there's so many things that are on my mind that I think of, but with vehicles, they're like, oh, if it's not electric, then it's not going to be allowed on the road. Have you ever even heard of any politician or any environmentalist talk about why don't they just do a conversion kit, converting combustion engines to electric? You could do a conversion kit. I Googled it. It's like $5,000 or less. You could do a conversion, turn a combustion, a car that runs on gasoline, petrol. You can convert it to electric. You could do that. We could do that. So we have all these new vehicles that are combustion engines, and they're saying, oh, 2030, everything has to be off the road. Just convert them. That's the cheapest way to handle it. They don't talk about any solutions. Around the world, we have thousands and thousands of landfills. They're like mountains. We're going to clean all that up. We're going to clean up the oceans. Those are all priorities. I want to clean up the environment completely. There's so much to do, but it's all manageable. It's all manageable. And I want to do that. I want to have free and fair elections. King doesn't get elected. I'm already king. I'm already governor. But I'm going to have all the elected officials under me, and I'm going to set the agenda. It will always be in a transparent way. I will always be talking to the people. I will always be doing videos, explaining what's going on, explaining why certain decisions are made. And I want support. And, I want people to know I have your best interests in mind. And I know the government and all the corruption, they try to undermine me or whatever, but I'm for the 99%. On one level, I'm governor and I'm king. On another level, I want to be an older brother that's looking out for my brothers and sisters. Worldwide. Worldwide. We're not going to have any more wars. As king, I'm also the supreme commander in chief. I know that's a lot to take in, but I am. And I'm going to control. There will be no more wars. Absolutely no more wars. Done. So I just thought it was important this morning, to come on, to kind of speak to people so you get a sense of who I am and what I'm working for. So I hope this makes sense and you understand the situation, but the system is entirely corrupt. It has to be done like this. You can't do little bits in here. It'll never get done. You need to be able to, in this world, you need to know how to get the job done, and you need to get it done. And it takes decisive action sometimes. But we can have the military come, they can make the arrest. All of this has been going on. The Department of Justice, they've already prepared all the sealed indictments. They know who the toxic criminals are with blood on their hands, and they know what arrests are going to be made. The arrest will happen. It'll happen quick. It'll happen quick. The arrests have to happen, and then we can have the phones will be distributed. We'll have free and fair elections on the phone, everything. There will be no more struggling to survive. No way. I want everybody in this world to have the same opportunities. So if you want to go to school, higher education, whatever it is, that path is available for you. There's no financial barrier. Right now, there's financial barriers for everything. People who are born poor, it's just your options are so limited. You don't even have the opportunities that others have. And so many people are poor in the world, and they're exploited. They're being exploited. So I want everybody to have the same opportunities. Something's going on outside. So anyhow, I hope this makes sense. I know it does. You just need to have an open mind and an open heart, and things will make sense. You have to. If you're closed off, if you're determined to like reject anything I say, then that's up to you. If you're determined not to understand what I'm talking about, But I've done all my homework. I've done the documents. I've done the documentation. I've done so many memorandums I've lost track of. Over 100 letters. I put everything in place. And I'm already king. I don't need to be voted in for that. The elections are for the other people. I'm above. I will always enforce and uphold the Constitution. I want law and order. For sure. So, okay. I know how long have I been? Almost an hour. So, peace and love, and I'll do another video soon. Take care.